Still struggling with muddy mixes? In this video, we're exploring 5 more ways to use a high-pass filter. In the last video, we discussed what a high-pass filter is, why it's a good idea to use one, and how to set one up. In this video, we'll break down 5 ways to use a high-pass filter with audio examples that truly highlight its effect. Whether it's cleaning up your drums, tightening up your guitars, or removing rumble from your vocals, these tips will help to bring clarity to your mix. I've also put together a free high-pass filter mix guide so that you can remember the tips outlined in this video. Go to the link in the description and I'll send it straight to your inbox. This video is sponsored by DistroKid. If you're an artist looking to release original music onto Spotify or Apple Music, DistroKid makes it fast and easy with unlimited uploads, and artists keep 100% of their royalties and earnings. So if you haven't already, you can use the link in the description to get a discount off your first year subscription. And if you're a student or a teacher, there's a separate educational link for an even larger discount. So let's start off with reason number 1, reduce rumble and noise. This is the main reason for using a high-pass filter. Cut out the low stuff that isn't useful for the mix. In most instruments, there's not a lot of useful information below 100 Hertz, so removing this will remove the impact of those plosives and other clutter that's going to be filling up the low end. Simply bring up a high-pass filter until you hear it start to thin out the tone of the instrument, then back it off just a little bit so that the fullness of the sound remains and all the excess clutter is removed. But we also did have this bass note in the intro of the song, and I want to make sure that we don't cut that out. So knowing that that's my lowest note, I'm going to go back and I'm going to set my filter to include that frequency. Now we can use a low pass filter to hear what it is we're cutting with the high pass filter. I'll use a low pass filter with a pretty steep curve of 48 dB per octave to hear what's going on in the low end of this piano track. We're going to start listening below 200 Hertz and then we'll go down to below 100 Hertz. So really, this is just rumble and noise from the foot pedal, so there's nothing really musical about this, especially below 100 Hertz. At 200 Hertz, there's a little bit of musical information, but we're pretty safe to cut everything below 100 Hertz, at least on this track. Next, let's set up a high-pass filter on acoustic guitar. So again, I'm bringing up that high pass filter and I'm hearing it start to thin out around 200, 300, 500 Hertz. And although that's nice because it focuses on the shimmery higher notes, I still want to include the body and the warmth of the guitar. So I'm going to bring that filter down and settle somewhere around 150 Hertz. So just like before, I'm going to use a low pass filter to hear what it is we're cutting with our high pass filter. So we have some information going as low as around 80 to 82 Hertz, which is going to be that low open E string. But it's not super essential for this performance because we do have a bass and the drums to reinforce our low end. This isn't a solo guitar piece where the guitar is acting as the bass instrument, so we're totally fine to cut this out. Now, some microphones have a built-in high-pass filter for speech. If your mic happens to have a high-pass filter, you can roll off some of those bass frequencies at the source. Some mics that are intended for vocal or broadcast use, like the Electro Voice RE15 or RE20 and the Sennheiser MD421 all have these roll-offs for bass attenuation, and this will help too. So this is the main reason for using a high-pass filter. You're going to use it to take out all of the low frequency information that's picked up by a microphone that you just don't need for your mix. This is something that you can consider when you're in the recording stage. If you know you're not going to need those low frequencies, you might as well cut them out right at the source. All right, reason number 2 is to clear up space in the low end. An important point to keep in mind is that your bass instruments will have more space to occupy if there's less low-end information coming from non-bass instruments. This means that there's nothing for your bass to fight against, and because of that, it can be heard more clearly in the mix. It also makes for a more balanced sounding mix as the rumble and clutter from non-bass instruments is filtered out. So, the more bass that you can take away from your non-bass instruments, the more space that you're going to leave for your bass instruments. So what I'm going to do for this example is set up a high-pass filter on every non-bass instrument somewhere around 100 Hertz. Sometimes it's going to be down at 80, sometimes it's going to be up at 120, sometimes up to like 300. I think in this mix, I high-passed a shaker at around 800 Hertz because there was just nothing up there. And then for our bass instruments, I've got a DI'd bass, which I've high-passed at around 50 Hertz. And then I've got a drum set, which I'm going to high-pass at around 40 Hertz. So what this high-pass filter is going to do is maintain the fundamental of the bass instruments while still trimming some of the fat on the low end. Now let's see the cumulative effect of using a high-pass filter by isolating the bass frequencies on the master fader. First, we're going to be listening to everything below 200 Hertz, then everything below 100 Hertz. And number 3, tone control. A great use of a high-pass filter is to thin out some of the bass on an instrument or even an effect like reverb. A high-pass filter can be a great tool for providing some clarity in a really busy bass part, especially at faster tempos where the notes might tend to blur together. You can bring up the filter a little bit farther than you usually would to get more of a John Paul Jones type feel that focuses on the low mids and the attack of the instrument. And number 4, you can create the appearance of depth. Removing low frequencies and high frequencies has the psychoacoustic impact of making a sound appear further away from the listener. This technique is commonly used on textures and other supporting instruments like a shaker or a background vocal to keep them further back in the mix. By contrast, this allows the main instruments to remain more in focus and stand up in front of the mix. This is one of the side effects of making it sound thinner. And we can also combine this with a low pass filter to create a narrow band, which is really going to help with making that instrument sound further away. Now, in our next video, we're going to be talking all about low pass filters, but let's get started with the high pass filter and see how this works to make something sound further away. And finally, reason number 5 is when using compression. When you're using a compressor, you can use a key input to filter out some bass. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, let's say you're using a compressor on your drum bus. Now, you have this massive kick drum and you really want that to cut through the mix. But when you use a compressor on your drum bus, it's going to compress every time that kick drum hits. So what can you do? If your compressor happens to have a key input or side chain, you can actually set it to allow that low frequency impact to go through and not be compressed, while also compressing everything above so that you can have a nice fat drum tone, but still get that massive kick going underneath. You can use a high pass filter in sidechain mode on the compressor to let the kick pass through uncompressed, and as a result you get those compressed drums while also getting a punchy kick that gets to cut through the mix. So I hope you did find this video helpful. Leave a like if you did, and consider subscribing if you want to see more videos like this one. And don't forget to grab the free 2-part high pass filter guide in the description. And while you're down there, leave a comment. Let me know your biggest mixing struggle, and I'd love to know if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. Up next, we're learning how to use low pass filters in the mix, so you won't want to miss that. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
When all we do is talk, it's not my fault.